Here we are then, 6 weeks in, and it's chapter 6 today of Where Did Your Heart Go by Audrina Lane. After a great lunchtime show, I was back in the car driving home. I always enjoyed playing other people's requests and the strange eclectic mix of music that always brought to my show. I had been working there for the last 12 years and I loved every minute of it. It also meant that I was always home in time for Charlotte finishing school. In the early years, Sarah and Chris had helped out and were like Charlie's second set of parents. I knew that I would never have coped alone without their help. Walking through the door, I scooped up the post and dropped it on the hallway table before walking into the kitchen. I put the kettle on and made a coffee and took it to the conservatory. I sat in the chair and picked up the book I was reading. I was so engrossed that I almost didn't register the door open and close until Charlie appeared. "Hi, Mum." "Hi, sweetheart, how was school?" "It was okay. It was hard seeing Craig with another girl." "It will get easier." "I guess, Mum." She filled a mug with coffee. "I'm going to do some practice now and then I'll be down for tea," she replied, swinging her bag over her shoulder. After tea, Charlie couldn't resist the lure of the diary and pulled out her bookmark. She noticed a note that was stapled onto a page further on and read through the next entries until she could reach it. Everything that Craig had ever sent her was via text or email, and she'd already deleted those, so it was nice to see that her mum had kept this. Friday the 22nd of January 1988. I hardly slept all night as the words from the note kept echoing around my mind. Why was life so unfair? I had just found a great guy who I knew liked me, but it was all for nothing. At the end of January there would be no more swimming, no more walking me home and carrying my bag, no more underwater kisses. Despondently I got up and dressed for school as I needed to talk all this through with Sarah. Luckily I found her waiting alone as the others had gone on ahead. She saw my downcast face and put her arms around me. "What's happened?" she asked. I passed her the note and she read it and then hugged me even tighter. "I don't know what to say," she said as we trudged along slowly. "Do you think I should just tell him how I feel?" I said, "or just stay as friends?" "Well, if you talk to him, what have you got to lose?" "Nothing really, as he's going away soon," Sarah replied. I nodded, and as school drifted by I went through all the possible scenarios in my head. None of them seemed to bring me any hope. At home in my room I went to bed early and put my stereo on. I chose the Faith album by George Michael. I listened as his soulful voice spoke to me. "Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody has a body like you." The words echoed through my heart as I thought of James's body and the way it made me feel whenever I was close to him. I longed to throw myself into his arms and beg him not to leave before I had a chance to fall in love with him. Saturday the 23rd of January. I spent all morning reading the note. Sarah was away for the weekend visiting her grandparents, so I walked straight to the pool. I wish my best friend was with me as I was so nervous approaching James after Thursday night, the note and the light brush of his soft lips on my cheeks in the darkness. Despite this, when I walked onto poolside and slid into the water, it was as if nothing had changed between us. "Hi, Steph," he said, as I pulled up beside him and hung on to the tiles. "Hi, James," I replied. "It's just the two of us today." He smiled as we swam off down the pool together. After a great hour, I still hadn't decided what to say to James. It seemed as if we had both spent the time avoiding any mention of the note or the kiss from the previous Saturday. "Would you like to grab a coffee upstairs?" he asked. "Yes, that would be lovely," I replied, smiling back at him. I took a bit longer getting dressed before I couldn't delay any more. I found him sat at the corner table, coffee waiting. "You read my note then?" he asked. "Yes." I lowered my eyes so he wouldn't see the sadness that stained them. I took a deep breath, but no words appeared that could portray how I felt. My courage failed. I just couldn't tell him that I wanted to be in a relationship with him, and not just as friends. I wanted more kisses. I wanted to call him my boyfriend and share everything with him. He reached over and took my hand in his, as if knowing that a touch was better than words. "I'd like to see you this next week at the pool. I'm working Tuesday and Thursday evening," James said. His index finger ran over the skin on my knuckles and I found it hard to breathe. "I'll be here," I whispered. "Would you like to go out on Saturday, as it's my last full day in the area?" he said. I paused. Had I heard him right? Was this going to be a date? Yes, I liked that. All I could think about in bed that night was the word goodbye. It sounded so final. Monday the 25th of January 1988. As I trudged along the path towards the end of Sarah's road, I could see all the girls waiting. The grey overcast sky matched my mood to perfection. "Are you okay?" June asked. "I've got a bit of a headache, that's all," I replied. We walked along and I listened as she talked about John. The lessons kept me occupied, and in English I whispered across to Sarah, "Do you want to come into town on the way home?" "Sure," she replied. By the time we left school and walked along the road, I knew what I needed to do. "So what's the plan?" Sarah asked. "I'm going to buy James a leaving card and present and suggest that we write to each other once he moved," I said. "We're sort of going on a date on Saturday." "Wow, that's great." "Well, not really. It's just going to mean I fall even more in love with him, and then he's just going to leave and I'll never see him again," I said. I was so close to crying, but I held it in. We walked into the card shop and I looked at all the leaving cards, but none of them said what I really wanted, so in the end I bought a blank one. Then I saw a fluffy elephant holding a heart that said "Never forget." It was perfect. Tuesday the 26th of January 1988. After school I hurried home to get ready for swimming. I was determined that James would always remember me with a smile on my face, even though inside my heart was filled with sorrow. As I walked onto the poolside, he saw me and waved from the chair. I slipped into the shallow end and then did a couple of lengths before stopping to the side of his chair at the deep end. He jumped down and knelt to talk to me. "Hi Steph, good to see you." "Hi James, how are things?" "Busy, packing at home. I never realised how much stuff I had until now," he said. "Will you miss Ross?" "I guess so. It's all I've known since I was born, but our new house looks great. It's opposite a large park and not far away from Warwick Castle." I watched him glance up and across the pool, checking everything was fine before returning his attention to me. "I thought I'd take you to Gloucester on Saturday as we can go to the cinema. Dad said I can borrow the car for the evening." He stood up and motioned that he ought to do a few laps around the pool, so I swam a few lengths further and thought about how great it would be to sit next to him in the dark. Climbing out of the pool, I did a couple of dives, and from his chair James gave me a few tips about keeping my feet pointed on entry. I was never going to be good as he was. As I finished my equivalent of a mile in length, I popped out of the water and sat on the side to catch my breath. James was on another lap, so I waited until he reached me. As he did, he nudged me with his foot and pushed me into the water. I came up laughing and spluttering. "Hey, that's not allowed," I said, pointing at the sign on the wall that said "No pushing." Glancing down the list, I blushed at the "no petting" statement and thought again of our kiss. "It is when I'm in charge," he said, laughing at my comment. Climbing out of the pool, I walked towards the chair where he sat. "I'm off now. See you Thursday," I said. I pulled my hair back from my face and looked up into his beautiful blue eyes. "See you then, Steph," he replied. Wednesday the 27th of January 1988. I am listening to A Different Corner by George Michael. The lyrics are making me cry. "Turn a different corner and we never would have met. Would you care?" Thursday the 28th of January 1988. As we walked home from school, Sarah turned to me. "Is it okay if I come swimming with you tonight?" she asked. "Yeah, sure, that would be great," I replied. "I'll meet you back at the corner at around 6:30. "Yes, great. I need to talk to you and school is definitely not the place." "Okay, see you later," I said, wondering what secret Sarah needed to share with me. "So, what's the secret?" I asked when we met up later. "Well, I really like Chris, but if James leaves, how will I get a chance to see him again?" "I'll try and talk to James and find out for you. Maybe this evening, but for certain on Saturday," I replied, happy to help my best friend if I could. On the poolside, we saw James leaning down to talk to someone in the water. As he pulled up, Sarah grabbed my arm as she realised that it was Chris. "It's your lucky day," I said as we wandered up to the deep end and James raised his hand. "Do I look okay?" she asked. "Of course, you look lovely," I replied. "Dive in, impress him." Then as I turned to James, Sarah did a lovely dive off the edge and swam back towards the side to wait for me. "Hi Steph, is that a new bikini?" "No, just one I haven't worn for a while," I said, blushing as always at his compliment. "It suits you," he replied, and I stopped distracting me from work and do some swimming. I nodded and sauntered towards the diving board and produced a pretty good dive into the cool blue waters beneath me. Chris had noticed us, but I guessed he was shy as he continued to swim lengths with just the occasional glance in our direction. We did the same until James motioned me over to the side. I'm just about to finish my shift, so I'll come and join you. Okay, any chance you can drag Chris over? Sarah really likes him. Sure. He is a bit shy, not a bit like me, he said, grinning. After another spectacular entrance into the pool from the diving board, he swam over and disappeared beneath the water. He grabbed my foot. Pulling me under, he tried to drag me away from the side, but I scrambled against his grip until he released me. I'll tickle you next time, he said. You better not, I hate being tickled. Chris swam over to us and joined in the general laughter. Once again I waited for James to make a move, but he didn't. Whilst the guys raced each other up and down, Sarah pulled me close. Why don't you kiss James, she said. It's almost your last chance. As I pondered this, we swam a couple of lengths and I decided that Sarah was right. So when James was alone with me in the deep end, I took the chance. I've got a surprise for you, but you need to go underwater and keep your eyes closed, I said. James looked shocked at my request, but he did as I asked. Taking a deep breath, I disappeared under the water and swam towards him. I reached out, and as I did, he opened his eyes and caught my hand in his, as he pulled me close and our lips found each other's. This time my eyes were open and we gazed. My eyes shone with the love I already felt for him. His were sparkling and blue, but I couldn't hope to guess what with, as we broke the surface together, our hands still clasped. We didn't need to say anything as we parted and swam the short distance to the poolside. Running my hand up to catch some of my loose hair back into my ponytail, James reached out and tucked a tendril behind my ear. Just that slight touch had me reeling and struggling to catch my breath as my heartbeat raced. Dragging her eyes away from the words on the page, Charlotte realised that it was much later than she had planned. She was so caught up in her mum's story. Part of her wanted to turn to the back and see how it ended, but she didn't want to miss any of this enthralling romance, as it had started to get really good. Underwater kisses? It was years since she had been to the swimming pool. Perhaps that was the place to go to find a gorgeous guy, or perhaps her mum and Aunt Sarah had just been extremely lucky that year.